Let's be real for a second. If you're a man today, especially one who's trying to connect with women in a meaningful way, you've probably noticed something. What used to work doesn't. You could be kind. You could be consistent. You could even be accomplished, well-dressed, successful, and still find yourself invisible to the woman you're interested in. Why? Because the game has changed, and most men? They're still playing by rules that expired a decade ago. See, we live in a world where attention is currency, where one swipe, one emoji, one heart react opens the door to dozens of options. She's not comparing you to just the guys at work or down the street anymore. She's comparing you to everyone. Athletes, models, travelers, CEOs, and yes, digital illusions who don't even exist in real life. That's the playing field now. And let's be honest, it's intimidating. But here's the truth no one tells you. Attraction isn't something you have to hope for. It's something you can create. That's right. She doesn't have to be interested in you right away. She doesn't even have to notice you in the beginning. Because attraction, real, lasting attraction, isn't based on initial sparks or surface-level status. It's rooted in something deeper. And that something has less to do with what you have, and everything to do with how you show up. Let me ask you this. Have you ever walked into a room and felt someone's energy before they even said a word? Maybe it wasn't what they wore. Maybe it wasn't even how they looked. It was something unspoken. Presence, poise, direction. They weren't trying to be like, they just were. That's what we're talking about here. You don't need to be her type. You don't need money, a six-pack, or some Hollywood jawline. What you do need, what every man can build, is presence, the ability to hold your space without begging for attention. Control, the emotional strength to lead, not follow. Strategy, the wisdom to engage her heart, not just chase her interest. Most guys try to push themselves onto a woman. They think if they talk more, give more, show more, they'll eventually win her over. But all that does is exhaust your energy and lower your value. What you really need to do is pull her in. You flip the game. You stop trying to prove something and start becoming someone worth noticing. Not through noise, not through performance, but through grounded, masculine stillness. Let's break the illusion. She doesn't fall for the man who tries the hardest. She falls for the one who makes her feel something different. And the truth is, you don't create that feeling by being nice or perfect, or available 24/7. You create it by being present, by being a man who's deeply rooted in his purpose, with or without her. Now, this isn't about playing games. This isn't manipulation. This is mastery. Because once you understand this shift, once you stop chasing and start leading, she can sense it. She feel it in the way you talk, the way you move, the way you don't need her attention to validate who you are. That's the edge. That's the beginning. And if that resonates with something inside you, stick around, because in this series we're going to break down the moves, the mindset, and the masculine energy that turn cold interest into real connection. Let's begin. Let me ask you something straight up. What happens when someone knows they can have you anytime, no matter what? They stop appreciating you. They stop valuing your presence. And eventually they stop feeling attracted. This is one of the most overlooked truths in modern dating. Being too available doesn't make her feel special. It makes you forgettable. Now I get it. Most men were taught that showing up consistently, texting first, checking in often, planning the dates, making the effort, that's what makes you a good guy. And in many ways, it does. But there's a difference between being a good man and being a man who gives himself away too easily. See, here's what most guys miss. Over-availability signals neediness. It tells her, without you saying a word, I don't have much else going on except you. And let's be honest, nothing kills curiosity faster than knowing everything is already on the table. The truth is, if a woman isn't interested in you yet, being always around won't change that. In fact, it does the opposite. It gives her no room to wonder, to feel, to miss you. You want to know what actually shifts the dynamic. Start being more available to yourself than you are to her. What does that look like? It means you're not always the first to respond. Not because you're playing games, but because you're actually busy building something. Busy working out. Busy reading, learning, building your career, tightening your routine. Busy becoming someone you respect when you look in the mirror. Because when a man starts living for something beyond female attention, he becomes magnetic, not because he's being cold, but because his time is earned, not handed out. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop orbiting around her, she starts wondering why you're not. That tension, that curiosity, is what opens the door to real attraction. Women feel things emotionally before they process them logically. So when you stop chasing, she doesn't just notice the silence, she feels it. She feels the absence of validation. She senses the shift in energy. And suddenly, you're not just that nice guy who always texts first. You become the man who's living something she's not part of yet. And now she wants in. But let's be clear. This isn't about ghosting her or playing the cold, distant game. This isn't about punishment or manipulation. It's about realignment. It's about pulling your energy back, not to get a reaction, but to put it where it truly belongs, on yourself. Because a man who's fully engaged in his own life is powerful, not loud, not flashy, just centered. And that kind of energy doesn't chase approval. It invites respect. I've seen this in my own life. There was a time when I thought effort equaled attraction. The more I gave, the more I reached out, the more present I was, the more she'd see my worth. But all it did was teach her she didn't have to earn my time. She didn't have to wonder if I was into her, because I made it obvious. And obvious is boring. It wasn't until I pulled back genuinely, not out of spite but out of purpose, that everything changed. I started getting texts like, "Hey, haven't heard from you," or "Everything okay?" She noticed the gap. Because now there was a gap, and that's the point. So if you've been showing up too much, giving too much, texting too quickly, you're not doomed. But it's time to recalibrate, not to punish her, not to manipulate, but to reclaim your center. Remember this. She doesn't want a man she can reach anytime. She wants a man she has to rise up to reach. So ask yourself right now, are you available to everyone, but unavailable to yourself? Because when you flip that, when your time becomes sacred, when your life becomes your mission, you don't need to chase. She feels the pull, and that's when attraction really begins. Let me tell you something most men never learn. Comfort doesn't create attraction. Curiosity does. Tension does. Think about it. When was the last time someone made you feel something unexpected, made you pause, wonder, or replay a moment in your head over and over? That's the emotional edge you need to create. Now, most guys think the way to a woman's heart is through consistency, politeness, and being nice. And sure, being respectful is important, but too much predictability? It's emotional silence. She forgets you as quickly as she met you. Because here's the truth. Tension is the secret ingredient. Tension is what keeps her thinking about you long after the conversation ends. It's the emotional spike that cuts through the noise of her day. So how do you create it? You flirt but don't flatter. You look her in the eye like she's beautiful, but not like she's the first woman you've ever seen. You tease her thoughts, not just her appearance. You disagree respectfully but confidently. You challenge her in subtle, playful ways. That signal, I'm not here to impress you. I'm here to connect if it's worth it. And just when you've stirred something in her, you pull back. You don't explain it. You don't send a "hey, just so you know I'm still interested" text. You simply vanish. Not to ghost her, not to manipulate her, but to give space. Space for the spark to burn. You see, women aren't addicted to comfort. They're addicted to emotion. the wondering, the not knowing, the surprise. And when you disappear after creating just enough tension, she feels it. Suddenly, she's not in control of the narrative. She's left with a memory, not a resolution. And unresolved stories? They replay on a loop. That's the hook. Now let's pause for a second, because I know what you might be thinking. But isn't that game playing? No, not if your intent is clear. This isn't about being cold or cruel. It's about being intentional. It's about creating a real moment, letting her feel something deep, and then stepping back to let her process it. Because real emotional attraction doesn't come from constant input. It comes from contrast. From giving her a taste of depth, and then leaving room for imagination. From showing her a version of you that isn't always accessible. Not because you're hiding, but because you're centered. Let's go deeper. When you stay too available, when every moment is wrapped up neatly, when you give her all the answers, what happens? She stops asking questions. And when she stops asking, she stops feeling. But when you drop a bold comment, then go silent. When you make her laugh, then let her sit in that moment without flooding her demise. When you connect with her in a way that feels raw, but then let her walk away with a little tension still in the air. You don't become forgettable. You become unresolved. And that's the most powerful space to hold. Because now she's not thinking about what you said. She's thinking about what you didn't. And here's the Stoic angle to all of this. You're not driven by her reactions. You're not clinging to the outcome. You're detached, not because you don't care, but because you're grounded in your presence, not in her response. Seneca once said, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. I'll add to that, to let silence speak for you. That's courage. So next time you feel like you need to fill the silence, don't. Next time you want to chase a reaction, pause. Let her sit with what you gave. Let her wonder where you went. Let her lean in on her own. Because here's the secret. When you create tension, then disappear. She's not just curious about you. She's drawn to you, and she won't even know why. Let's get something straight right now. The moment she senses that she's your mission, the game is already over, and not in a good way. I know, you like her. Maybe even more than you expected. She's magnetic, confident, maybe beautiful, in a way that shakes your usual calm. And when you meet someone like that, the natural instinct is to give, to show effort, to express interest, to prove that you're serious. But here's the harsh truth most men learn too late. If she feels like she's already won you before she's earned it, she stops valuing you. Not because she's cruel, not because women don't want love, but because we all lose respect for what's handed to us too easily. You see, attraction isn't about convincing someone that you're worthy. It's about showing that you already know you are, and inviting them to rise to your standard, not bend to theirs. Let me ask you this. Would you walk into a job interview and tell the employer, "You're the one I've been dreaming of. You're the whole reason I'm here. I'll do anything you want. Just please accept me"? Of course not. Because that's not confidence. That's desperation dressed in sincerity. And yet, that's exactly how many men approach women they're drawn to. They overgive, overshare, commit before she's done anything to earn that level of devotion. But here's the truth. A woman doesn't want to be placed on a throne she hasn't built. She doesn't want to be the queen of a castle she hasn't even walked through yet. What she actually respects, what draws her in deeper, is a man who is already committed to himself. A man who's not looking to be saved by her attention, not addicted to her validation, not willing to betray his own mission for a chance at intimacy. Because self-loyalty is magnetic. When you put your path first, when you live with focus, when you keep your emotional frame no matter how beautiful she is, that's when she starts to lean in. Not because you begged for it, but because she can feel that you're not waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. There's a power in that. A calm confidence that can't be faked. And no, it's not arrogance. It's not playing hard to get. It's knowing that your time, your peace, your presence are earned, not given away freely like candy. I'll tell you something personal. The relationships that turned toxic in my past had one thing in common. I made her the goal. I placed her above my growth, my schedule, my energy. And you know what happened? The more I gave, the more she pulled away. Because deep down, she could feel that I was abandoning something sacred, my own center. But the ones that flourished, they began with a man-me who was already full, already whole, already walking his path with or without applause. And here's the twist. When you become that man, when you radiate that grounded clarity, you don't need to chase. She feel pulled. She start wondering why you're not trying harder. And that question, that subtle insecurity, is where curiosity is born. So let me say this loud and clear. You are the goal. You are the mission. She's not the center of your universe. She's a visitor to it. And if she adds value, if she brings peace, if she aligns with your values, then sure, let her in. But not before, because the man who crowns her before she's earned the title will always end up begging to be seen. So here's your reflection for today. Are you offering the throne to someone who hasn't even shown up for battle? Are you giving more than you've been shown? Are you chasing a feeling instead of choosing your path? Flip the script. When she looks at you, let her feel the weight of a man who already knows where he's going. And if she wants to join you, she have to walk toward you, not the other way around. You are not an audition. You are the role. Let me ask you something real. How many times have you adjusted who you are just to be liked by her? Maybe you didn't say what you really thought. Maybe you laughed at a joke that wasn't funny. Maybe you agreed when you should have stood your ground. Why? Because somewhere deep inside, you were hoping for her approval. I've been there. And if we're being honest, most men have. We're conditioned to believe that if we just show how kind, agreeable, supportive, and emotionally open we are, she pick us. That if we don't rock the boat, if we stay safe, she stick around. But let me drop the truth here. Approval seeking is self-abandonment in disguise. Every time you morph yourself to fit her preferences, every time you silence your truth just to keep her around, you chip away at your edge, at your masculinity, at your power. You become what she wants to see, but not who you actually are. And here's the kicker. Women aren't drawn to the man who tries to please them. They're drawn to the man who doesn't need to, not in a cold, egotistical way, but in a quiet, grounded, unapologetic way. A man who walks into a room and doesn't ask, "Am I enough?" but says with his presence, "This is who I am. I'll let you decide if it aligns." There's a strength in that, a stillness, a clarity, because now your self-worth isn't outsourced to someone else's opinion. It's anchored within. And look, I get it. Validation feels good. It feels good when she likes your message, when she smiles, when she calls you back. But here's what I want you to really sit with. Do you respect who you're being when you're around her? Are you saying what's true? Are you living in integrity? Or are you performing hoping to be accepted? Because attraction isn't built on perfection. It's built on presence. And the moment a woman senses that you've lost your backbone to win her over, the attraction starts to fade. She might not even know why, but she'll feel it. Let me put it this way. There's nothing more powerful than a man who doesn't flinch, who holds eye contact, who disagrees calmly, who doesn't rush to apologize for having standards, who doesn't twist himself just to be chosen. That man, he's rare. And rare things are valued. Here's the philosophy behind it, and this is where Stoicism comes in. Marcus Aurelius didn't write Meditations hoping for likes. He wrote to understand himself. He lived by principle, not popularity. Epictetus said, If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, you cannot grow and still obsess over being like that. So today, I want to offer you this. Stop trying to be approved of. Stop bending to avoid rejection. And start standing for something. Not just with her, with everyone. Because when you let go of needing her to like you, you reclaim something much bigger. Peace. Not the kind that depends on whether or not she texts back, but the kind that lives in your chest because you know you showed up as you. You spoke your truth. You didn't perform. You didn't chase. You led. So next time you're in front of someone you're attracted to, pause and ask yourself, am I being honest or just trying to be liked? Because once you stop seeking her approval, you stop playing small. And that's when she starts seeing you, not as a nice guy to keep around, but as a man to remember. Let's talk about something no one teaches you in school, but it changes everything in relationships. Predictability kills attraction, not because being consistent is bad, but because being completely predictable. It drains the emotional tension. It kills the mystery. And without mystery, there's no magnetism. See, when a woman knows exactly what you'll say, how you'll respond, when you'll text, what your next move is, she stops wondering. And when she stops wondering, she stops feeling, because curiosity is emotional engagement. It's the hook. And once it's gone, you're not exciting, you're just familiar. So here's the move. Be unpredictable, but do it on purpose, not in a flaky, chaotic, immature way, but in a way that says, I'm grounded in who I am, but you're not going to read me like a cheap book. You're consistent in your principles, yes, but not in your patterns. Let me make this clear. This isn't about playing games. It's not about disappearing for days, ghosting, or being emotionally unavailable. That's just insecurity wearing a leather jacket. What I'm talking about is controlled unpredictability. It's deliberate. It's thoughtful. It's real. It's the difference between texting her at the same time every morning and leaving space. Not to punish, but to shift the rhythm. It's the difference between saying yes to every plan and sometimes saying no, because your time is actually yours. It's the difference between reacting instantly and letting a little silence breathe. Let me ask you, have you ever felt someone's energy change, even just slightly, and found yourself wondering, did I do something? That tiny moment of uncertainty, that's tension. And in the right balance, tension is what makes you unforgettable. We're not drawn to people who hand us everything up front. We're drawn to the ones who leave just enough unanswered, just enough unsaid, that we start writing the rest of the story in our minds. Here's the Stoic layer to all this. Unpredictability doesn't come from neediness. It comes from presence. When you're internally consistent, when you live by your own rhythm, you become naturally unpredictable to the outside world. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you're not trying at all. You're just being. And being, when rooted in purpose, creates contrast. Some days you show up with deep focus and calm. Other days with humor and spontaneity. You don't owe her the same version of you every time because you're evolving. And that contrast? That's what keeps her invested. Now this takes emotional discipline because it's tempting to fall into patterns. To reply quickly because you're excited. To say yes to every invite because you don't want to lose momentum. But attraction isn't about momentum. It's about movement with intention. You create unpredictability by doing what most men avoid. You pause before you respond. You show up deeply present. Then disappear into your own life. You give warmth. And then space. Because space is where curiosity lives. It's in the moment she expects a message and doesn't get one. It's in the, I'll call you later, that doesn't come right away. Not because you're being cruel, but because your attention isn't free. And here's the twist, when done right, she doesn't feel ignored. She feels intrigued. She leans in. She starts watching closer, reading deeper, replaying things you said. Because now you're not predictable. You're present and dynamic. So next time you feel the pull to explain yourself, to fill the silence, to stick to a routine, pause. Break the rhythm. Let her wonder. Let her reach. Let her feel the shift. Because when you become unpredictable on purpose, you're no longer background noise in her day. You're the one she studies. You're the one she chases. Let me give it to you straight. You will never reason your way into her heart. You can't convince a woman to desire you with bullet points, rational arguments, or a well-rehearsed list of why you're a great guy. Because attraction? It doesn't live in the mind. It lives in the body, in the nervous system, in the gut. That's the part most men completely miss. They think, if I can just explain myself better, if I can prove I'm responsible, respectful, reliable, she see the light. But logic is slow. Emotion is instant. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt someone's presence without a single word exchanged? That moment where time slows, where something in you leans in, even if you don't know why. That's emotion. That's what women respond to. Now don't get me wrong, being a solid, grounded man is essential. But no woman lies in bed at night replaying how logically responsible you were. She replays how you looked at her, how your silence made her feel seen, how your energy shifted something in the room. That's the impact. That's what lingers. So how do you trigger that kind of emotion? You stop trying to impress and start trying to evoke. You tell stories instead of spitting facts. You disagree, but with a smile. You hold eye contact just 1 second longer than expected. You let the silence breathe after a powerful sentence, because you're not afraid of it. You don't try to fill every gap with words. You let her feel what's between them. That's emotional stimulation. And it's rare. Most guys, especially the nice ones, play it safe. They're polite, predictable, polished, but they're not memorable. Because they never create a spark. You want to be remembered? Be the man who shifts her energy, not her opinions. She doesn't want a lecture. She wants an experience. She wants to feel something different when she's around you, something she doesn't get from anyone else. And this isn't about being overly emotional or dramatic. In fact, that's where Stoicism steps in. Because Stoicism doesn't say, ignore your emotions. It says, feel them, then control them, use them, channel your presence with intention. Speak less, but mean more. You don't have to talk a lot to be felt. In fact, the men who say the least often leave the deepest impression. Why? Because every word they do say is rooted in something real. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine used to try so hard to impress this woman. He'd tell her about his goals, his business, his routines. It was like reading off a resume. She listened, but she wasn't moved. One day, he stopped. He simply sat with her, looked her in the eye, and said, I think the reason you intrigue me is because you're hiding something under all that calm. Then he said nothing. Boom. No compliment, no flattery. Just a mirror. And the silence that followed said more than any pickup line ever could. That's emotional presence. It's not about intensity. It's about awareness. It's about knowing how to tune into the moment and tune her into herself. When you do that, you're not asking for connection. You're creating it. So the next time you find yourself trying to explain your worth, stop, shift your energy. Slow down your words. Raise your gaze. Speak from your center, not your insecurity. Because if she has to think about whether she's attracted to you, you've already lost. But if she feels something and can't quite explain why, now you're in. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Are you trying to convince her with logic or invite her with emotion? Because the men who win her mind rarely win her heart. But the man who can stir her emotion with quiet confidence, she'll chase him, even if she doesn't know why. Let me tell you something that almost no man is taught. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step away, not storm off, not block her, not slam the door and call it setting boundaries, no drama, no emotional fireworks. Just a quiet, deliberate shift in presence. Because here's the truth. Absence only carries weight. If your presence ever meant something, let that sink in. See, we live in a world where availability is praised, where people think showing up 24/7 is how you show you care. But when you're always around, always texting first, always showing up, you don't feel special anymore. You feel expected. And what's expected becomes invisible. You ever notice how we don't really think about the air we breathe till it's gone? Same thing here. When you're too available, too responsive, too predictable, your energy stops creating impact. She doesn't lean in because she already knows you'll be there. But when you pull back, not out of spite, not to manipulate, but from clarity, now the space starts speaking. She notices the absence. Not just because you're quiet, but because something that had presence is now missing. That's when the silence becomes felt. It's not loud. It's not desperate. It's just undeniable. And the key? You don't chase. You don't explain. You don't announce your exit. You simply step back with purpose. Because in that distance, two things happen. First, she starts to wonder, why isn't he calling? Did I say something? Is he done, or is he focused on something else? And second, you begin to shift. You refocus on yourself, your energy, your routine, your health, your goals, your craft, whatever builds the man she never truly saw coming. Because if you're going to disappear, let it be for your evolution. Let it be because you're sharpening the edges of who you are, not just waiting by the phone hoping she notices. There's a quote I've lived by for years. The most magnetic men don't walk away to punish. They walk away to rebuild. That's the move. You're not creating emotional punishment. You're creating emotional contrast. And that contrast is what she feels. It's what lingers. It's what makes her go back and replay the moments. The way you spoke. The way you held your frame. The energy you brought into the room. Suddenly, it echoes in your absence. But here's the truth that separates the amateurs from the men who actually grow. If your presence never held weight, your absence won't either. So before you pull back, ask yourself, have you shown her depth? Have you given her a real version of yourself, not the performing version? Because if you've only been convenient, then your silence will be too. But if she tasted strength, if she felt seen, challenged, stirred, then when you go quiet, she'll feel the shift in her bones. And here's the most important part. When you return, if you return, you don't come back seeking validation. You come back stronger, calmer, more focused. Not because you needed her to miss you, but because you used the time to realign with your mission. That's the difference between a man who disappears out of fear and a man who steps back out of discipline. So here's your reflection today. Are you constantly available out of emotional need? Or are you willing to create absence that holds weight because your life has gravity? Because when you do this right, you don't need to say a word. Your silence carries a signature, and your return speaks louder than any explanation ever could. Here's something no one tells you growing up. Your attention is not free. It's not some casual thing to hand out just because she's attractive, charming, or gave you a little eye contact. Your attention is your power. It's your currency. And if you're giving it away too easily, too quickly, without her earning it, you're not building desire. You're draining it. Let's get real. Most men are chasing attention when they should be protecting theirs. They text first. They double text when she doesn't respond. They adjust their schedule, drop their plans, cancel their gym session just to get a reply. They give their emotional energy away like it's unlimited. And what does that signal? It tells her, my attention is not valuable. You don't have to work for it. You already have it, just by existing. And the second she senses that, The chase is over. Because people, men and women, don't value what comes too easily. Now, here's the shift. If you want her to feel drawn to you, if you want her to lean in, initiate, wonder where she stands, you need to flip the dynamic. She needs to feel that your attention is earned, not assumed. Not because you're cold, not because you're playing games, but because you're in your lane, you're focused on your mission. You don't have time to pour into people who haven't shown they deserve it. This is what I call strategic availability. You're not unavailable. You're just selective. You respond but not immediately. You engage but not constantly. You're kind but not over-invested. You give her a taste of who you are, but you never offer the whole menu on day one. Because when you're constantly showing up, constantly replying, constantly accessible, she doesn't feel excited. She feels in control. And here's the truth: attraction lives in uncertainty, in curiosity, in that subtle tension of, does he like me? Am I getting through? What is he thinking? So let me ask you, are you giving her something to chase? Or are you doing all the chasing? Because here's what happens when you start holding your attention with value. She starts checking in. She texts first. She leans in a little more. She starts trying to impress you, not because you manipulated her, but because you signaled that your presence is something worth earning. That's rare. That's masculine. That's what flips the emotional script. And this is where Stoicism comes in, because a Stoic man doesn't give for approval. He gives when it aligns with his values, with his purpose, with his peace. You're not emotionally impulsive. You're not pouring into someone hoping to be chosen. You're not validating her just because she smiled. You're grounded, disciplined, still. And from that stillness, you choose who gets your energy. There's a quote I live by: if everyone can access you, no one will value you. So if you've been too available, too responsive, too emotionally generous, it's time to realign. Start slow. Pull back, not to punish but to rebalance. Give her something to wonder about. Let her feel your absence between moments of connection. Because when you stop chasing and start choosing, she feels it. She doesn't just see your worth, she wants to prove she deserves it. And that, my friend, is where real attraction begins. Video script part 9. Don't be too available. Let me hit you with something simple but powerful. Being too available will destroy your value, not because kindness is wrong, not because reliability is unattractive, but because constant access leads to emotional invisibility. Think about it. What happens when someone always says yes? When they always respond in seconds? When they're always there, no matter what? You stop appreciating them. Not out of malice, just out of human nature. We don't value what's always on tap. We value what feels earned, what feels chosen. Here's a visual. You're stranded in the desert. It's 110 degrees. You'd give anything for one sip of water. And when you get it, that water tastes like heaven. Now compare that to a soda fountain at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Everything's available 24/7. No scarcity, no tension. You sip, but you don't savor. That's how emotional availability works too. If she knows she can have your attention at any time, for any reason, without earning it, it loses its weight. And once your presence becomes expected, it becomes forgettable. So, what do? You pull back, not out of spite, but out of respect. For yourself, for your time, for your mission. You stop being reactive. You stop dropping everything to reply. You stop saying yes just to stay in her orbit. You become intentionally present, but selectively available, because time with you shouldn't feel automatic. It should feel chosen. You don't want her thinking, he'll always be there. You want her thinking, if I want to be in his world, I better bring something valuable to the table. That's when appreciation grows. That's when desire stays alive. Because now your presence has context. It has gravity. Here's something I learned the hard way. There was a time in my life when I thought the more present I was, the more she'd feel safe, wanted, special. So I made myself available at all times. I adjusted my schedule, texted her first, dropped everything when she called. And what happened? She stopped showing up. Stopped replying as quickly. Started pulling away, not because I wasn't good enough, but because I was too easy to access. Too emotionally accessible, too quickly. There was no tension left, no anticipation, no mystery. I was a story she already read. And closed dot, so I made a shift, not to be cold, but to be intentional. I focused on my work. I kept my phone away. I trained. I learned. I leveled up. And when I gave my presence, it meant something. And guess what? That's when she leaned in again. Not because I changed who I was, but because I made my attention valuable. So let me ask you, are you giving your energy like it's endless? Are you always saying yes just to keep her interested? Or are you showing up on your terms, with purpose, with standards, with clarity? Because here's what you need to know. If you're always available, she won't value you. If you're never available, she won't trust you. But if you're strategically available, calm, grounded, present when it counts, she start adjusting to your rhythm. She'll wait longer for your texts. She'll clear her calendar when you're free, because your time is no longer just given, it's earned. And here's the Stoic core of it all. Don't give your presence to everything that calls for it. Give it only where it aligns with your purpose, because when you do that, you no longer chase approval. You attract respect. You don't just become desirable. You become unforgettable. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. Have you ever given someone everything too soon? You opened up. You shared your thoughts, your time, your energy, maybe even your plans, your heart, your attention, all in the hope that she'd stay, that she'd choose you. And what happened? She started pulling away. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you gave too much, too fast. Here's the hard truth most men don't learn until it's too late. Attraction doesn't grow in certainty. It grows in curiosity. When there's nothing left to explore. No questions left unanswered. No mystery, no tension, no emotional edge. The human mind checks out. It stops wondering. And when a woman stops wondering about you, she stops feeling pulled toward you. Now, I'm not saying you should withhold love or play games, but if you want to be remembered, don't give it all away on day one. Instead, learn the power of strategic INCOMPLETENES. You don't need to finish every story. You don't need to send the extra text. You don't need to stay on the date until the energy dies down. You end it early, right at the peak. Why? Because the brain remembers what's unfinished. We replay the conversations that didn't resolve. We obsess over the kiss that almost happened. We revisit the man who didn't give it all. Because something inside us wants more. It's the same reason we binge watch shows with cliffhangers. The same reason we reread old messages that ended abruptly. It's not the closure that keeps us hooked, it's the open loop. So the next time things are going well, don't overstay. End the call before it drags. Leave the conversation with a smile, not a summary. Say, I'll tell you the rest another time. Let the space between moments breathe, because that's where the magic happens. That's where she starts wondering, what else is he holding back? What's behind that calm stare? What's he doing now? Without me? And that curiosity? That's the emotional tension that creates obsession. Now here's where Stoicism shows up. Marcus Aurelius never said, give all of yourself to be liked. He wrote about self-respect, restraint, and intention. You don't express to impress. You express only when it serves your virtue, not your ego. You don't open up just to win her over. You reveal what's real, but only as far as it aligns with your center. You share, but you don't spill. And that difference? That's what makes her want to stay close, because now, you're not a finished book. You're a chapter she's still trying to unlock. A question she doesn't have the answer to yet. You become a story worth returning to. So if you've ever wondered why things started strong and then fizzled out, check your pattern. Did you rush in with everything? Or did you leave room for her to miss you? Did you speak from your soul? Or did you flood the space hoping to be chosen? Because if you're always offering more than she's ready to receive, you'll overwhelm her instead of inspire her. But when you learn to pause, to pull back, to walk away at the right moment, you leave her wanting, not confused, not manipulated. Just move. So here's the takeaway. Don't aim to impress her. Aim to stir something real, then step back. Let your presence echo in your absence. Because in a world that gives too much too soon, the man who knows how to hold something back, that man becomes unforgettable. So here we are, after everything we've covered. After the strategies, the mindset shifts, the deep truths. There's one core idea that runs through it all. You're not here to chase. You're here to choose. Let that land for a second, because for most of us, the old pattern is hardwired. We're taught that to win love, we need to hustle for it. Text more, try harder, give more, be more agreeable, more available, more impressive. But what if I told you that none of that creates lasting attraction? What actually draws her in, what keeps her thinking about you long after you've left the room, isn't what you give. It's what you evoke. It's not in the chase. It's in the energy you carry. Because here's the truth. You don't become unforgettable by being constantly available. You become unforgettable by being aligned. By being a man who lives by his own rhythm, who moves with clarity, who speaks with restraint, who doesn't beg to be chosen, because he already is, chosen by himself. There's nothing manipulative about this mindset. It's not about tricking her into desire. It's not about tactics or playing hard to get. This is about energetic integrity, about standing so deeply in your truth that people feel it, without you needing to prove it. The man you're becoming, he doesn't need to perform. He doesn't need to convince. He simply is. He knows that when he shows up, grounded and present, the right people lean in, and the wrong ones drift away, and that's okay. Because this path isn't for everyone. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's not always understood, but it's powerful. Because it's honest. And when you walk it, when you trade the chase for calm focus, when you replace constant effort with centered energy, when you stop trying to be liked and start living by your own code, she feels it. She's not drawn to you because you won her. She's drawn to you because something in your stillness reminded her of what she doesn't find anywhere else. Presence, depth, mystery, direction. You're no longer the guy who waits by the phone. You're not the one adjusting yourself to fit someone else's frame. You are the frame. And that's when things change. Not just in your dating life, but in how the world responds to you. Because a man who respects his energy, who protects his focus, who chooses peace over performance, that man doesn't chase opportunities. He attracts them. And that's where you're headed now. So if you've been walking this journey with me, if something in this series has stirred something real in you, a fire, a question, a shift in how you see yourself, I want to invite you to go deeper. Subscribe. Join the Stoic Heart Daily. Not just for more content, but because you're stepping into a life where you no longer shrink to be liked. You lead. You grow. You build from the inside out. And that's the kind of man this world needs more of. You've spent enough time chasing. Now you choose.